Morning, everyone. Yeah, I guess my task, I've got the easiest job at this event. It's just to repeat what everybody said earlier in the morning and walk out, you know. Yeah, but we are happy to be here as the bank and lending support to this effort within Kenya. I help manage a project called Financial Sector Support Program, which is a $37 million project over five years, providing support to a number of agencies on the regulatory supervisory side within the financial system in Kenya, which includes supporting to enable efficient intermediation, so investments in credit infrastructures, where we're working together with our colleagues from the IFC. I read through the delegate handbook. Very, very impressive. I think the topics, the people that are here, some of them former colleagues of mine at the bank, which is quite impressive. In terms of the topic, maybe if we start why the bank's interest in financial technology, fintech, I think largely the governor sort of pointed to this in a way. I think fintech offers an opportunity to really rapidly expand access to finance and financial inclusion, but also at the same time, there are risks and vulnerabilities that this entails by leveraging this kind of technology. I think earlier speakers talked about issues on market abuse, over-indebtedness, the issues around cyber attacks and cyber security. Also, there are financial stability implications. Within the World Bank Group, our engagement on the topic really is at three levels. Globally, we are engaged within the standard setting bodies, such as the Committee on Payments and Markets Infrastructure. We're also chairing the Committee on Credit Reporting. So we've worked on things. Recently in June, guidance note was issued on alternative data and credit reporting. Colleagues on the committee at the BIS have worked on cybersecurity, e-payments, as well as RegTech. Regionally, the bank is engaged through advisory services as well as financing operations. So there are a number of operations that the bank is engaged in on the topic right across the globe. We've been working on regulatory sandboxes in Jordan, Morocco, Indonesia. We've been working on cybersecurity frameworks in Pakistan, digital finance roadmaps in Afghanistan, and in Africa, a new program on digital finance partnerships. Now, the third area where the bank is engaged in is around guidance tools and toolkits. So this is where sort of the knowledge and thought leadership is sort of distilled in very sort of practical policy recommendation or guidelines. So this includes inputs to things like the G20 high-level principles, as well as aspects like cybersecurity simulations, where you simulate a crisis and how that is then resolved and managed. In Kenya, as I mentioned, we are working on the bank side together with our IFC colleagues in making investments around efficient intermediation. The FSSP program, as I mentioned earlier, the second component is focused on this, where the support is really underway. So maybe just to pick up from where the governor sort of left off, I think he was very eloquent when he said that, maybe I'm paraphrasing, I think he dared the conference to sort of really think much more broadly, that maybe some of the challenges we face around access and inclusion is because we're not sort of putting on, challenging ourselves in sort of the solutions that are needed to really advance, access and inclusion. And really, it's beyond just access and inclusion, because that access has got implications on livelihoods for communities, for households, also their resilience to withstand shocks whether it's climate risk or just financial shocks that may arise. So in thinking around technology and I think trying to address the issue that Governor presented, I think I'll try and look at some of maybe 3 broad trends that's sort of emerging within this sort of financial technology, and sort of try and pose questions around these 3 trends that maybe for the next 2 days you could try and deliberate on as you go on with the rest of the conference. So, I mean, with technology, I think it's clear that the risk and opportunity lies at the same space. So there's a question as to whether technology will allow developing countries such as Kenya, developing regions such as the IFC, to leapfrog, to things like universal access for finance, for education, for health, for a lot of other issues within the development sphere. But then there's also another school of thought where technology is sort of seen as a disruptor, where it will actually destroy economies within these developing countries, destroying jobs and livelihoods as it were. So, that's sort of a discussion maybe for another event, but certainly those are questions which are out there. But what is certainly true is that with technology now, we do have far much more data than we've ever had, than we had in last century and like we never had 10 years ago. So there's much more data, and with data, we then can create a digital profile of everything. So what do we do with it? What is enabling this, developments of digital profiles? One, the first trend is the digital transformation of the economies. This is coming about because of connectivity of people, connectivity of businesses, as well as of devices. Now, this is shaping the way businesses are structured and the way businesses do their own interaction within the marketplace. It's not just about what they do or how they do it, it's also about why they do it. So it's within that space that the new digital entrepreneurs are sort of emerging to redefine the structures, to redefine the interactions, as well as redefine how consumers are able to get their goods and services, including how they get their information. So the resulting digitization of transactions, the data that entails, the mining of that data, and you could argue, that the incumbents, which traditionally have been the banks, have been somewhat lazy in sort of trying to capitalize on this opportunity, which these much more agile digital entrepreneurs are seizing on. So the key question here then is this it when it comes to digital, transformation of the economies? What more needs to go in terms of advancing the development of the digital economy? What sorts of policies, what sorts of programs are needed to really move the frontier forward? There could be some of the key kinks around broadband access. There could be issues around electricity. Governor also mentioned the issue around skills, digital skills, analytical capabilities at business level, where the economies, as far as that ecosystem is concerned, to really be able to push that frontier further deeper so that you leverage the technology. The third trend is that fintech is enabling new business models, new business processes, and new products to sort of emerge. There are new norms that are emerging. Different combination of businesses which were not possible before, or even decoupling of businesses, from the way we've sort of known them over the years. But then within the financial services space, the innovations are really still taking place around the much more traditional sort of functions of a financial system. It's around deposit taking, around lending, It's around payments, clearing and settlements, around capital raising, it's around insurance and risk management services. It's also around investment management. So it's more than just lending, and certainly it's more than just payments. So there's a whole broad, holistic innovations that are taking place and need to take place for that. But then, be as it may, fintech investing is still very much in its infancy. You know, I was talking to somebody earlier on over tea, and they tell me their firm was just like, you know, three years old. So that's 3 years old to really begin to think too much around regulation. 3 years old is too young to sort of think that, you know, we've sort of honed in the understanding of the sector and how the sector then moves on. So there's a lot of learning that needs to take place. Some of the innovations are yet to be tested through, you know, the ebbs and flow of the economy. You know, economies sometimes are in boom, sometimes they're in bust, sometimes they stagnate. How do these innovations stack up when the economy is moving in that way? In a sense, there's still limited data to make firm conclusions on some of these issues. Certainly also are the tools, because the business models for these new players are certainly different from the incumbents. So the way you assess from a regulatory point of view safety and soundness, maybe the traditional tools may not necessarily fit appropriately. So then again, I think the question to ask on this is, who are the business enablers within this ecosystem? What are the key drivers of value? And how do they collaborate with governmental agencies really to create the new strategies, to create the new initiatives and policy reforms that create that enabling environment for growth? Because again, remember, African governments, Kenyan governments, they are looking for new sources of growth, looking for new sources of jobs, and you know, new sources for shared prosperity, particularly for the young generation. I think the last trend point is around the fact that regulatory approaches to fintech are certainly evolving. I don't think it's sort of static. Everywhere you look, regulators, policymakers are really thinking anew of how to make the adjustments to ensure that they're able to embrace and leverage that the potential that fintech has, whilst managing the risks. At the moment, there seems to be consensus that not so much pressure is being put on financial stability issues, but rather the focus at the moment seems to be around balancing integrity, innovation, and competition. But of course, the issue of balancing stability and all these other 3 points I mentioned earlier is because I think globally fintech is sort of in a space where it's still a small segment of the larger financial systems, particularly if you look at systems within the Western world. Certainly in the developing world, that may not necessarily be true depending on where you are standing. But then what also is clear is that the fintechs are really active game changers globally and certainly in Africa. It's also clear that the 21st century financial services sector will be about big data. There are huge opportunities to generate value from accumulated data. But at the same time, it sort of presented a paradox because you know, there's sort of a change in the meaning between what is private and how then do you create value from the same data. Data has become the raw material for the new innovations that needs to come there in terms of products, services, business models, as I mentioned earlier. Therefore, I think a big question going forward is how to balance this data protection and value creation issue. Now, as I said, the bank has been chairing this subgroup on alternative data and credit reporting. under the ICCR, and at the end of June published a guidance note on this topic. I think the issues within there would be quite helpful in sort of helping structure the thinking around issues on pushing the frontiers of fintech. I think around the theme of this event, how do we improve availability and accuracy of the information? How do we expand information sharing? How do we preserve data privacy, consumer protection, including issues like balancing opt-in, opt-out models? How do you maintain price stability? And I think what is also unique in East Africa within the ESC, I think much more reality, is the cross-border sharing of this data. So I think I just wanted to leave you with those thoughts in terms of 3 trends and how we begin to think through those key questions of moving the agenda, pushing the needle forward. And thank you.
Thank you.